Got a red straw in
Those
everything.
Bojangles.
Ah, dude, nice. We don't have Bojangles around here. It's good stuff, though.
You got that Whataburger in Texas, though.
Hey,
Hey, we got Whataburger. It is good, and I've started to see Zaxby's show up around here. That's a new one for our area. Usually, you gotta head east to find Zaxby's, but yeah, it's starting to show up here. Surely Bojangles won't be too far behind because
Mr. Bojangles.
they don't like each other very much.
Bye, sweetie. Have fun. I'll see you later on.
I'll give some product placement so that they can
There you go.
come down your way.
That's
We'd
my
like
boy.
to recognize our sponsor, Bojangles.
Awesome. Okay, hello.
Hey, my
If
allergies killing me.
you're watching us, we are just doing a little last minute prep here. Today we're going to be talking about AI and creativity and how it's going to destroy, sharing the gospel and all the other horrible nightmares that we're all afraid of when it comes to AI.
Little did we realize the Antichrist is actually a computer.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, he is.
We never knew it was such a way, but it is.
Let me see. I wonder, can I go? No. All right. So if I'm in that.
Good
What?
enough. Those of y'all tuning in, that's the exciting part of our show. Dave going, can I? Nope, can't do that.
Can't do that. No, I'm just for those of y'all who are wondering, I set this up as an event so that you guys would get a you would get the notification and all that sort of stuff. So I just was this is the first time I've actually set up an event. AI. Let's see, I'm calling this AI in Church. Rob Water. And
Hey-o.
and so I was getting the recording set up. There we go. All right, so I was trying to set this up, and I wanted the event to do, but I've not done an event through Restream and to all the different platforms and stuff. So it's like, okay, this is one area of Restream I've not played with yet. So I was just wondering, could I make the whole thing take up the full screen? Can't do that. So I am going to be watching and monitoring over on YouTube. And I know Curtis is as well. And Rob, if you want to go into the hacks group, just so you can see if anybody says anything in there, then you can bring that to us. Rob is one of our early founding members of the hacks group. It's been there almost since the beginning.
What we're saying is he's a hack.
He is a hack.
Is that what we're saying? That's not very nice. Dave, I thought he was your friend. Thanks. You're like Ivan called words.
Yeah.
We're frenemies. All right. I'm in hacks, so.
Awesome. You should see it in there. Is it live? Are we live? Or are we in Memorex? Good. Rock and roll.
Yep.
Hey, good morning, Tom. Tom Willis is in the chat. Tom is literally the original fan follower, my original audience. It started with me and Toby Henshaw, our early youth pastor 5, 6, 7 years ago, 8, something like that. It was 16, I guess, when we started, and we started doing something on, I think it was called Blab, and Tom was there, and he's followed us ever since. So I commend Tommy for his stick-to-itiveness and, I don't know, sadistic nature or masochistic nature. I don't know. He subjects himself to this, so. All right, so let's see.
I love this comment. Am I that old? Yes, Tom, you are.
Yes.
You are, and we all feel a little old sometimes when we start talking about AI because we all watch Terminator, and we know how this ends, right? We all know how this ends.
Where is our Sarah Connor?
Oh wait,
That's what I'm looking for.
Wait, we know how it ends because we read Revelation. Sorry,
Yeah.
I confuse those things sometimes. Sometimes it seems like we seem to think there's something inside of our own abilities to be godlike, to do something that's up for God, to do. I don't know. Interesting, but
all right. Let me see here. Let's see. Rob, are you North Carolina, South Carolina?
North Carolina, Raleigh-Durham area.
Very cool.
Gorgeous area.
I'm guessing you've been to Mayberry Days.
North Carolina.
I'm guessing you've been to Mayberry Days or whatever.
Proof. He has proof that he's there.
Actually,
I don't have a Whataburger cup.
Right. I actually just spent a week up in Mount Airy at a Boy Scout camp I used to work at, doing some photo and video production for them. So
that's awesome.
Very familiar with old Mayberry.
Yes, my daughter and I want to go to Mount Airy and go to Pilot Mountain and Siler City and all that sort of stuff. Hit all the the highlights of the show.
I didn't go to Charlotte. Year, I know that's kind of like cheap.
Do what?
I was just up at the Boy Scout camp I used to work at, and I didn't go up there this year, but last year we were hanging off the side of a cliff face at Pilot Mountain with my camera strapped into my side in a belay and trying to get kids climbing up a mountain.
Dude, that's awesome.
Nice.
Let's see.
Whatever it takes for the right shot.
Squeaky there.
Right.
All right, folks. I think we're good. I need to tweak myself. Hang on. I changed out my camera here, and I'm doing. I don't know if I don't know if I told you, Curtis. We're doing at Zondra TV. We are going to be doing a. No, that's not going to work. We're going to be doing a. We're calling it the Bible Project, and what it is having people read a few chapters a day from the Bible, and then we're going to visually represent that and stuff. And so we're shooting it all on green screen. And so I took the camera that I usually use for this show and took it up there because when I was doing Geek Beat TV and everything with Geek Beat and doing all the all the commercials and stuff that we did for Monster Cable and all those different people, we shot, thousands of things on green screen, and that's the camera I used. So it's like it's my known quantity in any sort of a new green screen setup. And so I'm using a different camera here, which has a different focal. Yep, it's out all the way. It's got a different focal length, so that's why I'm humongous in my square here today, folks. I'm gonna have to get.
You're kind of large.
Yes.
Kind of large in your square.
Large, and in charge. All right.
It's the way you always want it, Dave. Just to be in charge.
Yeah. I'm a great number 2 guy.
Rob and I don't understand that at all.
No.
We didn't become technicians so we could control things, tell people what to do, and then edit them out when we don't like what they've said. None of us can relate to that.
Not at all. All right.
Well, actually, I brought in Dave to help out with the shoot I was doing back in February, and he had to be my number 2. He was pretty good, pretty gracious.
Yeah,
brought his old man vibes a couple times, reminding me how young and inexperienced I am.
We got who was the guy? This is, by the way, this is all free, folks. So you get a little behind the scenes stuff. The guy, the thing that we were doing was for folks that are influencers in the firearms group, what niche or whatever. People that do like
YouTube influencers in the tactical industry.
In the tactical industry, thank you. The guy we saw the guy that does all the training for movies and stuff. He's the one that's trained Keanu Reeves and anybody that is doing any kind of Chris Pratt. Any of these guys that are doing tactical stuff. This is the guy who's training. Do you remember what that guy's name is?
I can't remember.
He's pretty cool. I've seen some of his videos, and is it Lonnie? No, is it? Anyway, the guy's awesome. He's he's one of these guys that literally could win like any 3-gun, any sort of tactical scenario or anything. He's like rapid fire and accurate as all snot, man.
Did he just say, "Call me Baba Yaga"? I mean, just curious.
Baba Yaga.
Was there a dog? Did he have a dog with him?
That's right. He's the guy that you call to kill the boogeyman.
Just be nice to the dog. That's all I got to say.
That's right. All right, folks. I am going to hello to Justin, our life on YouTube. Let's see. Justin, you said that there's tech problems. Are we having tech problems? I don't think we are.
My audio's got some lag.
The lag coming from me to you.
No, I think when I'm talking, it's a little delayed, but we'll be all right. Just give me some space, and we'll make it happen.
Okay. I want to see if there's a way to adjust. Give me 2 seconds here.
How many countries we get in? We're when we say other countries, we mean places like the UK and Indiana. We always have Indiana, right? It's a different country. Not really. Not like Oklahoma, but we got North Carolina here, so we can get Indiana in, and then we need to get we don't have anybody from Oregon watching. We need to get somebody way up in the Northwest.
We've got Jordan. Actually, Jordan just jumped in, and he's up there in Victoria or something like that. He's up in Canada.
Alberta.
Yes, Alberta.
There
we go.
Yes, that's where he is. He just told us. So awesome.
All right, guys. So
up in good old Canada.
Yes, he's in Canada. The land that time forgot. All right. So here we go. We're going to start. If you all have any questions, we're going to be talking about AI, specifically in the area of creativity and generative art, all that sort of stuff. We're going to be talking about some of the ethical side of it. We're going to hopefully dispel a few myths, and we will be talking with Rob Lauder. And he is, as soon as it all started, he jumped in and has been running, headlong into this. So he knows what he's talking about, and he is the first of our experts. I'm calling you an expert here, Rob. So yes, you can wear that moniker proudly.
You can call me whatever you like to.
He's in a little series that we're going to do here on AI and stuff. So I hope you guys enjoy. If you have any questions, we will get to it as soon as we are finished with the official recording, and we'll hang out as long as necessary, and as long as our schedules allow. Here we go. AI is everywhere. And so as church media creators, can we ethically use AI? What are the implications? Does it enhance our creativity, or does it zap our creativity? That's what we're going to be talking about today. Welcome to the Church Media Creator Show. If you are joining us for the very first time, my name is Dave Curley, and I am a church media creator. And with me, as always, is the legend, the man, the myth, the indomitable, the irreconcilable, Curtis James. Curtis, welcome.
Wow, that was a very elaborate and unintelligible introduction. Maybe the most unintelligible introduction I've ever received. Thank you, Dave.
That is
Appreciate
awesome.
It so much. Glad to be here today. I'm excited about what we're talking about because I do get questions about this, and there are people who are wondering, about some of the details that come around with AI. There's so much fear, and there's so much just limitations and not limitations, and so many people have so many different things to say and so many different ideas. We have a great idea. We have a great opportunity here to kind of flesh that out and talk about what does that mean for us here in our church space. And so I'm really excited about this conversation for sure.
I am too. This is there's confusion out there, and that's one of the things that I'm hoping that we can alleviate some. And I want to introduce our guest to you. Rob Lauder is a longtime friend of mine. You guys, if you guys have been watching the show for the last few years, since Justin and I were hosting, Rob was one of our guests. He talked about photography and creativity and all that. He is a intrepid photographer. He is a videographer. He is a creative. He is he's an artistic genius, I like to call him. He's also on the creative team at Summit Church. And please welcome Rob Lauder.
Howdy. Thanks for having me. Excited to chat.
Yeah, it's going to be cool. So let's just jump off real quick. I want to say, earlier this year, I remember our mutual friend Kenny Jang started the AI for Church Creatives group on Facebook. And if you're not in that group, then go look it up. It's really cool. All this AI stuff really kicked off early this year, kind of in earnest. And Chat GPT came out. We got Midjourney coming out, and then DALL-E and all these little derivatives of the various projects, and apps have been coming up like crazy, and things have just been, I'm trying to remember what the formula is, but when I came into the computer industry, the technology industry, back in the early 90s, it was something law. I can't remember what the law was, but it was like, technology.
Moore's law, maybe?
Is it Moore's law? The one where technology doubles
every 2 years.
Yeah, it was like every 10 years or something like that. And then it has gotten rapidly where, I mean, here we are at the time of this recording, it's the end of July of 2023. And, we really have seen in the last 6 months, things go from near zero as far as the general population's awareness is concerned to like light speed and stuff. First off, Rob, tell everybody what you do and why you got into this interesting little creative field.
Yeah, so I, like you mentioned, I'm on the creative team here at Summit. Summit's a multi-site church in the Raleigh-Durham area of North Carolina. We've got a team of 9 or 10 folks who support our creative team. And I've always been kind of like the special teams of the creative team. We've got videographers and social media people and designers. But when there's something that comes outside of the pipeline, that normally falls to me. Something that either takes a specialized skill set or something we need to do some research on before we were to implement that. And so that's shown up in, founding our photography team, like we've talked about in the past. That's shown up in animation and 3D work. But when the generative AI stuff started coming out, it, as a content creator myself, it's like, hey, this has massive potential to help with content creation and a number of other things. Let me get into it. Let me kind of stretch its limits and see what I can explore and figure out what are the applications of this stuff for ministry, for work, for life, all of those things. So it's been my current hyperfixation for a good 6 months now. But AI obviously precedes that for decades, but it's like you mentioned, it's just coming up into the mainstream now, and it's going to really, I think, change how the world works in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think so. I remember, I guess it was around Christmas time, Thanksgiving, Christmas time. That's when we started seeing all those little apps come out where you could animate or make a new avatar of yourself. And I remember over the Christmas holiday, just playing with that and, going, that doesn't look anything like me. Oh, that actually does look like me. Ooh, that looks right. Way cool, and that makes me look like like John the Baptist or something like that. That's ridiculous. So, I think a lot of people have this apprehension, especially I think in the church space. I think we tend a lot, especially older. I can't believe I'm saying this. Older folks like me tend to take a look at some new technology and think, this is a fad. This is, I remember hearing people say that, the internet in 1994, saying that the internet was a fad and that, it wasn't going to be around long. And they've said that about every kind of medium, every kind of creative medium, communications medium. I don't think that AI is a fad, but the people have concerns, especially when when we look at um, in the church space, and we look towards the rapture of the church, we look towards the events in Revelation and stuff. Are these things that are going to be hastening all of that? Or are these some of the things that are going to be controlling us? AI is scary. We've all seen Terminator. We've all seen The Matrix and all that sort of stuff. um do you see that kind of thing happening where we are currently with the technology, just in general? I don't think we understand it yet.
Yeah, so I think that's a big part of the fear is that a lot of people don't understand it. I can't remember the specific statistics, but I think it's 1 in 6 people in the United States have even used an AI tool, let alone using it effectively and using it well. So there's still a lot of like, you've got that Terminator Skynet, in the back of your mind. You hear AI and you see on its face, it looks really, really powerful. Like it can create anything and do anything. I think though, as you get to use it, you realize like this is still in its infancy. Like it's sometimes ChatGPT can blow my mind. Sometimes I'm like, I would get better results out of my 4-year-old. So definitely not going to take over the world anytime soon. Definitely not going to replace people anytime soon. But like we've observed, it's growing so quickly. Like that could change next week. Like we could have a completely new AI model that does all sorts of things next week. So I think while it's wise to be asking the question, in what ways can this negatively impact the world? And we've got legislators in the EU and in the US and all over the world creating policies and laws to try to guide those things. I think the more interesting question for me has been, what are the ways that we can embrace this now and use it in an effective, safe, and healthy way that can enhance our productivity, that can enhance our creativity, that can help us do ministry better, and all sorts of other things. So that's the more interesting question for me. If AI is going to take over the world, there's not a whole lot I can do about it.
Right.
So Maranatha, Jesus come. If that's the beginning of Revelation, let's bring it on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting, Dave, because you talk about like, well, these things hasten these things. It's like we're going to stop them from happening. We're not
Right.
going to stop them from happening. They're going to happen. I'm not saying like, oh, well, we should go ahead and just become the Antichrist if we want to. No, that's not what I'm talking about. Not that you probably have that capability as a viewer, but when it comes down to it, it's like, oh, are we hastening this? Are we fast forwarding this? It's gonna happen. It's
Right.
written. The book is already written, and so for us to be like totally resistant doesn't make a lot of sense. But I do think there's some interesting questions, Rob, that kind of tie into what you're talking about. Like, so as churches, if we want to utilize these things, if we want to do it, a lot of the resistance comes down to ethical questions of how we utilize, how we work with the moral and ethical aspects of this AI is pulling information from all these different sources. There's copyright concerns, there's all these different kinds of things going on. So, share with us as you've walked this road and used it some in your ministry, and you've maybe seen it in your industry as well, some of the ethical concerns and how you've been able to feel good about how you're using it ethically, and how some of our viewers might be able to utilize it in an ethical way, but also are there unethical ways that we
Mhm.
should avoid using it?
Yeah. So do we want to kind of limit this to ministry context, or do we want to broaden that out?
I say we do
I would
both,
say,
because
yeah,
I tell people that while me and Curtis are in the niche of church media, it's creative arts just like anything else. It's just I'm not targeting small business owners who want to use media. I'm targeting ministers and people that want to use it to expand the gospel. But it's all the same stuff. So let's just talk general. I'm
Yeah.
I'm cool with that.
Cool. And we're all 90% of us bivocational anyway. So we got to
Right.
do both ministry and do the work of, our labor.
That's right.
So yeah, so um, let's start with kind of the questions of like things are like what are AIs trained on, and how does that play into the ethics of using AI? My when I first started, experimenting with AI, my understanding of, say, take Midjourney for example. Midjourney is an AI image generator. They type in text and it comes up with something, and you can say, "Give me a photo or artwork in the style of Norman Rockwell," and it will produce it. My thought was it was kind of like photo bashing. Like I was going to go collect a bunch of photos, I was going to put them together, and I was going to take this piece of that one and paste it there, and just kind of arrange these elements. And when I had that understanding, I was like, that doesn't seem right. Like, I'll use this for some casual fun stuff, but I don't really want to use this in a commercial or a professional application. The more I learned about how AI actually works, though, it kind of got me, you know, a little bit more open to using it in different applications that would be more commercial. Um, for example, the way that an AI is trained, and we'll use image, but text works the same. Most AI models are currently the same way. Is that it works a lot like humans learn, actually. So, an AI is trained by looking at a gazillion images. The foundation for most of the AI image generators out there is Stable Diffusion, and it was trained on, you know, hundreds of thousands, millions, billions of images that were kind of just scraped off the internet. But it's not actually storing those images at all. When an AI is trained on images, it's going to look at an image, and then that image is going to be paired up with some text that describes the image. And it kind of like looks at, okay, so this image is an image, it's a photo of a man wearing a hat, a blue shirt, things like that. And it's learning the concepts of man, photo, blue hat, shirt. And then it discards the image, but then it's remembering the concepts. So as you come to Midjourney and you type in a prompt, what the model is going to do is it's going to say, okay, you're asking for now a man with a blue shirt. It's going to take all the knowledge it has about man, blue shirt, etc., and then start to generate an image out of that. And so the original source material is never stored, never directly used in the output. Now, there's been, particularly early on when training was sloppier, you generate an image in Dolly, for example, or Stable Diffusion, and you'd see the Getty Images watermark in there. So it learned that stock photo means this watermark, and we know that AI is currently terrible with text, so it wouldn't say Getty Images; it would say boogaboo, boogaboo, but it would be clearly what the Getty Images watermark was. So I think there's still reason to say, like, to ask the question, where are the lines, where are the boundaries, how much do we want to do this? But then again, going forward, I think the question becomes, how can we train AIs in ways that do respect artists and do respect copyright? Um, Adobe Firefly, for example, is another generative AI model, and they're trained only on licensed images. So you can go to Adobe, use Firefly, and once it's commercially available, use it for anything without any copyright concerns. The last thing I'll say to that matter is that there are a number of court cases working through the pipeline on adjudicating this question. So asking, like, what in the world are the ramifications of training all this stuff? There's artists specifically that are suing some of these model creators because their content was ingested and used. It looks like that hopefully reason will prevail, and the judges seem to be like, I don't think that you understand it as well as you think you do, and I don't think there's a legal implication here. But legal and ethical are two different questions too. So
Right.
I'm very sensitive to how I'm using AI, and I also want to be nuanced and principled on the reality of things from a legal perspective as well. So at this point, I'm more comfortable using things legally, but I still want to make sure that I'm not just being exploitative in the work that I'm doing.
So is it
So
is the legal cases because the artwork was ingested and studied, kind of en masse, or is it because you're copying my style? And the reason I ask is because you're a photographer, I'm a photographer. Curtis, has a camera on his phone, but um,
not a
I like
photographer.
I like Ansel Adams, and so he photographed the Pacific Northwest, And so if I decide I am going to do my landscape photography like Ansel Adams, and I'm even going to go to some of the same locations and take pictures of the same monuments and things that he did, is it likely that because I am exposing like he did and I'm using techniques that he did, I may even be using, a vintage camera like he did, can I get sued because, hey, you're copying Ansel Adams stuff, or because it's art, it's derivative, this is my creations? And is there not a difference?
Yeah. I think if I could distill the question, is the legal question the copyright, direct use of the material, or is it the emulation of style?
Right.
And I think that's where you get into that's the dichotomy right there between legal and ethical. A style can't be copyrighted.
It's style. I would sit there with a coffee table book of Ansel Adams things, and I would see he had this f-stop and he had exposure for this long and he used this film. So I'm going to go and do all of this. I'm copying his style and I'm using his artwork. I'm ingesting it, right, to develop a style based on that. So yeah, that's, I can understand kind of the scraping and doing it in mass, and, every public, copy of this piece of art that's out there and stuff, you're just grabbing it and using it to learn from. I can understand people getting scared about like that, but I think there's direct analogs to what we do in real life anyway as artists.
Yeah, and I think
I agree with that.
a lot of the question when we talk about ethical, we're talking about source material versus extrapolated material. So like source material is what I make. So like you talk about Ansel Adams photo. So if I take an Ansel Adams photo and I upload it into Dolly and I tell it, hey, do it, but do it in this style, and it changes the style into a comic book art, and then I use that for something commercially, I think there's a big ethical issue there because the source material is Ansel Adams' picture.
Right.
I'm not just saying, hey, do this in an Ansel Adams style. And so a lot of it comes down to source material. Back 25 years ago, there was a program called Cakewalk, or 20 years ago. Cakewalk was an audio software. It was an arranging software. You could record into it. It was like GarageBand or something. But one of the features it had was you could have it accompany. You could put in chords, and it would build an accompaniment. You could say, I want it in Duke Ellington style. And it would basically build out a keyboard piano part and a drum part that sounded like the way Duke Ellington did it. It was an early AI is what it was. It was mimicking a style. No one was ever concerned that someone was going to confuse it with Duke Ellington because it stunk. It was really bad at what it did. But it was really cool that it tried really hard. And so now we're in a situation where it's developed so much over the years that it can at times present something that's very similar or whatever. So I think it always comes down to source material. If you're just saying, hey, ChatGPT, write a book about this, and then you put your name on it, that's an ethical issue. But if you've written a chapter for a book and you say, hey, ChatGPT, look through it and do a copy edit, which I don't highly recommend. It's not great with, or make some suggestions on, don't trust its copy editing, or make some suggestions on things I could add to it or a story that might be interesting in there. That's different. It's your source material. And so as with an image, if we say, hey, I like a guy in a blue shirt with a button down and a name tag and, working on a car. Okay, well, you've come up with the source material. Just because you can't draw or just because you're a bad photographer doesn't matter. It's your source material, and the AI is extrapolating from all kinds of material out there, but you're already extrapolating from that material. You're already thinking, I want the blue shirt guy. I've seen 100 shirts with pictures with a guy in a blue shirt. I've seen 100 pictures with a guy with a name tag on him. You're actually the one who's compiling that information. So I think the ethical related issue when using it in a church setting, in a commercial setting, is whose is the source material. If the source material is coming from your mind, then I think that there's an ethical honesty there. But if the source material really isn't, if I just uploaded an Ansel Adams picture and said, change this into a modern, watercolor, that's not my source material, and I shouldn't use that. To me, that's so the ethical line isn't just cut and dry, because we
Right.
want to make sure. I mean, the Bible's clear that we are to compensate people from their work, that they've earned their work,
Absolutely.
that this work is them using the gifts and talents that God's given to them, and so we don't ever want to undermine that. And but at the same time, uh, if we're true and honest with the source material, then that's different. And I think we can feel honest about using it in that way. Do you agree with that, Rob? Is that something that kind of jives with how you've interacted with it, or is that too extreme on my part?
Yep. Yeah, so I would I affirm the desire to remain above reproach, particularly in how we use the technology, and also honoring the creators who have created these, derivative works. I think that I'd probably be a little bit more permissive in how I use it at this point, and the reason being that um, the the ethical questions are kind of tied into the legal questions, and so what I mean by that is like when you brought up the example of if I generate a book out of ChatGPT and
Which you
slap my
did.
name on it, that would be. I was going to get to that. Yeah, that was one of my early experiments with AI.
Which was really cool, by the way.
That would be an ethical question. Thank you. Th- when you look at the license terms of these products, particularly ChatGPT, Midjourney, etc., they are very clear that as long as you have a paying account, you own the content. And so the AI isn't generating the content on its own; it's generating the content based on your prompt and what you've asked it to do. And so I wouldn't be comfortable writing something and saying, "Hey, I wrote this personally," but as Dave mentioned, like one of the first things that I tried with AI was like, I wonder like what can this thing actually do? And so I'm like, I'm going to write a kid's book. And so, through a collaborative process, and I think that's the theme we need to explore here. Through a collaborative process, I went to ChatGPT. Is like, hey, I want to write a kid's book. Help me brainstorm some themes. And it's just
Mhm.
like if I were collaborating with a co-author or a publisher to say, all right, here's some things that we think might be interesting. Then I used my brain and I said, hey, I like this concept here. Let's explore that. Maybe let's write an outline for that. And it's like, okay, I like this. I don't like this. Shift it around. Write the first chapter. Um, and through, over the course of an hour, I wrote like a 2,000 word kids book. But it was ultimately my creativity guiding the process.
Right.
And it had to start with me. Um, and so I did put my name on that. I actually also went back and did some extensive editing and rewrote a lot of the content. So I'm comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable with just cranking out content, clicking a button, and then saying I wrote that. But if I use AI as a partner in the process, is it any different than a ghostwriter? I don't think so. Um,
Yeah.
as a second experiment, I was trying to work on let's take that to the extreme because that's how I work. I want to take everything to the edges and limits of what it can do. I said, how can I use ChatGPT, for example, to write long form content? And so just I prototype everything in the absurd. So all the examples I bring up are going to be ridiculous. But I was like, ChatGPT, I want to write a self help book written by cats for cats. And I worked on a work, by default, you can only get 8,000 tokens of content out of GPT-4,
Hang on.
which is
Hang
about
on.
6,000
Hang on.
words.
By cats for cats.
By cats for cats.
I love
It's
it.
the art of indifference. The Art of Indifference: A Cat's Guide to Coolness by Felicity Napwell. I'll post a link somewhere. Um, but I'm like, how can I cajole this model into creating long form content? Because it's not about the content for me; it's about the like, what can I do with this thing? And so I wrote some Python code to basically write a synopsis, then out of that form an outline, then out of that loop through the outline and take a chapter at a time and crank it out. And I put together 53,000 words of content. It took 6 hours for it to run. It cost like $8 in API credits, but overnight I had an entire book, and it's probably better than 50% of the crap on Amazon, to be honest. It's also totally absurd, but The point is that in that case, like, I don't know, legally I could put my name on it, but I'm like, do I want to put my name on that? I'm
Right.
not sure I want to put my name on that. So that's an example of another type of, you know, approach that, like, if
Well,
you're just cranking out that content, I don't think that it's wise to put your name on it, but I don't think it's a necessarily a legal or ethical
right.
problem.
You know,
The only thing I'll add to
Yeah,
that, though, is that as uh, I think the part that makes the whole legal question so interesting in this particular time to be alive is the fact that our laws accommodate these things currently. So the current law isn't capable or sufficient of answering these questions. And so all of these cases that are being decided now are going to set the tone and tenor for the next, you know, several decades
right.
of generative AI content. Currently, when, you know, and at the cusp of, you know, this mainstream boom of AI, the Copyright Office said that, you know, there's a specific example where a graphic novelist created a graphic novel. They used Midjourney for images. They used ChatGPT for the text, and they said you can copyright the assembly of those things, but they said you can't copyright the particular images within that. Anybody could just take those and use them because they were generated by a computer. And I think that has a slight misunderstanding because AI can't generate anything spontaneously on its own.
Right.
It needs a prompt. That prompt could be a prompt to create and run a prompt. So, like,
Yes.
but at some point, it comes back to human interaction in order to produce that. And so I think that that'll play out in the courts. I hope that they find a balance that respects the training process and the original source content while still honoring the fact that AI artists are using a creative tool with human creativity to produce unique and interesting works of art. So
Well, I
I
mean,
hope we
yeah.
can find a balance
it's
there.
it's kind of like AI is the brush, you know, and you know when we went from painting with brushes, you know, to graffiti artists that were using, you know, uh, compressed air in a can to spray the paint. It doesn't make it more or less a painting. You know, it's still being done. It doesn't matter what the tool is to create it. Um, you know, we saw this with animation where you were doing cell animation, and they were using, you know, onion skin paper to, and, you know, constantly going back and forth. And eventually we got tweening, you know, where we could say, here's one reference image. And then several frames later, here's another reference image. Will you please interpolate, you know, the gap in between? And the computer started being able to do it. Doesn't make it any less animation, and it doesn't make it any less of a creative process. And you mentioned like working with a ghostwriter. I was thinking the exact same thing. It's no different than commissioning a piece of art. If I said, Rob, I want you to go out to Yellowstone and I want you to take pictures of the five major visual stunning, you know, scenes that are out there, and here's $1,000 for you to do it, and when you come back I want you to give me the negatives and, you know, and the prints and stuff. I've commissioned you to do a piece of art. I own that art because I've paid you for all that source material and stuff. So if I have a subscription to one of these things and I commission it to make a piece of art, then the computer is a series of tools that is generating this. It's paintbrushes and cans of spray paint and all that sort of stuff. It's got shutters and whatever else, just like a camera does, let's say. So I don't think, personally, I don't think it should be any different. And the fundamental misunderstanding, I think, is by the court, not completely understanding the technology and stuff. And I'm hoping that stuff like that does shake out over time, and I think it will.
And I think an
Yeah,
additional
I
part
agree.
of the conversation that's really interesting, Rob, as you were describing your cat book, which I really want to read now. As you were describing your cat book,
I got it
you
pulled up here
begin to talk
for you
about how you
right
went into
now.
Python and you wrote a little bit of code. Oh, that's genius, and all that kind of stuff. I think that one of the missing parts in how we process this is the true artists to me in the whole AI process are the code writers. Like you talk about how you went into Python and you wrote this, and so it would loop back around because ChatGPT has these limitations and number of words and all that kind of stuff, which I've played around with that too some, and you run into a wall, but devised a way. So you wrote some code for that. We're using the code that was written by the individuals who put together ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's a learning thing, but in essence, I think you could argue the true artists involved are the code writers. And so the code writers who own ChatGPT or were paid to create ChatGPT say you own the license to this, then that's the artist giving permission or giving ownership to us as the user. And so I think that's a piece that we kind of ignore. Like you said, it doesn't initiate anything on its own. You have to initiate it. We as human beings initiate what we want the AI to do. The AI functions within the parameters that it was programmed to function within. And so it's not just off running on its own, doing its own thing, right, even though it can learn and grow in ways on its own after it's been set in motion in some ways. And of course, people are afraid of that, and the Matrix or whatever. But yeah, I think that it's an interesting dynamic where somehow in this whole process, nobody gives credit to the coders when what they're doing is actually amazing art, right, in how they're building this stuff.
Yeah, let me. You mentioned there that AI learns and grows as it goes, and people are afraid of that. I think that's a misconception that we can talk about, that we can address too. So, ChatGPT, for example, every time you train a model, you're either taking a model and you're fine tuning it, or you're giving it more training, or you're starting from scratch. AI models learn, not in the sense that the more I use it, intrinsically will it get better, but the way that AI models are learning it are that the developers are looking at all the interactions that we're creating. That's why you don't want to use ChatGPT for sensitive stuff, because it can be used for training unless you opt out. But then they're taking that feedback, and the humans that are developing these models have to incorporate it back in. The model can't learn anything outside of the context of your chat. So I can guide that, in my chat GPT session, I could say, hey, I want you to respond as this thing, and it will do that. But, and I can say, hey, my name is Rob, and it will learn that. But it's only learning in the sense of it remembers that because I've given it that text, and later in the chat, it can reference that. If your interactions could directly impact the model, that would be absolutely disastrous, because every person who wanted to maliciously inject something into this model could say, like, hey, I think this person is the biggest dummy on the face of the planet, and get ingested in and get used automatically. So these models aren't currently learning on their own. They're being trained and guided, and then a milestone will be released, and another one will be released. But it's all a human guided process. Now we're working toward AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, which is teaching models to learn and to develop new things. I think that's what really has AI developers even a little nervous. Is like, once we hit that, now we're in a whole new level of unpredictability. Like, already AI developers don't know why the model does what it does in a lot of cases. And so before a model is ever released, there's a lot of red teaming, meaning like people will try to break it and force it to do things that you don't want it to do, at least in the general population. But once models do get to the point where they're able to start to learn themselves, I think that's where this whole conversation ramps up. So I think it's good that we're having a conversation now and putting guardrails around things. OpenAI, for example, just said they're going to take 20% of their compute power and put it towards solving that problem of like making sure that we're having the right guardrails on AI. So they're developing an AI to put the guardrails around the AI, which seems like cart horse situation. But I, for one, I think that. Right. I think that the developers in the mainstream areas are doing the right thing. I think there's probably there's going to be bad actors, just like with anything else, that are going to do the wrong thing. I am an optimist in the area, but also a cautious optimist, knowing that things can. The human heart is wicked above all else, so we will find ways to use it for horrific things. Let's promote the good, is my stance on that.
No, I agree. Yeah. Well, okay, so go ahead.
I was going to say, when it comes down to it, I agree. I think we see in the industry there's a lot of people who are saying, let's be wise with this. Let's
Mm-hmm.
not just run a
Mhm.
million miles ahead into this wall and see what happens. And I like that and I respect that. But let's shift gears just for a
Mhm.
second here, and let's talk about from a church standpoint, from an administrative standpoint, and communication standpoint. How do you see AI being beneficial to use in the ministry of the church?
Yeah, and how are you using it, in your
Mhm.
current position?
Yeah. So I think that's such a hard question to answer because it can impact every area of your work in ministry. Um, So, yeah, I guess let me just give you some practical examples of ways that I've used different generative AI tools within my workflow. So, I mentioned I'm the associate creative arts director at Summit Church. That just means other duties as assigned. Whatever my boss needs me to do, I go and do and figure things out. Um, in my day-to-day responsibilities, I have some creative responsibilities. I have some strategic responsibilities. I have some leadership responsibilities. I've got direct reports. I oversee our social media strategy, all sorts of things. And then we're training some interns over the summer that want to learn the creative process and communications process. So, my role is very diverse. In the creative realm, I see generative AI being used from start to almost finish. Um, when I first introduced AI to our team here at Summit, the first thing I did was I sat down in our conference room. I put ChatGPT up on the screen. I said, "Let's figure out what we can do with this thing." And so we were working on a concept for our Easter videos at the time, and we had some ideas. And basically, we used ChatGPT as a collaborator. We said, "All right, help us brainstorm some themes. Like here's the direction that we want to go." Um, what are some different angles that we could take on this? And because AI is working off this vast a compendium of knowledge that I don't have in my brain, it can come up with some unique things that at least spark an idea for us to run with and move in a specific direction. It didn't in that case, but it was because we were already kind of settled on an idea. Um, so I think in the just the brainstorming and prototyping stage of creative endeavors, it can really be used to spark new ideas and explore ideas. Yeah, my favorite question, or one of my favorite questions to ask in a chat with ChatGPT is, "What if?" Like, what if this? Yeah, okay, that's a great idea, but what if that thing happened? And through a conversation, now I can go in multiple angles and explore different ideas, and then I can say, "Hey, can you we just explored a lot. Can you just summarize all that?" And it'll condense it for me, and I can say, "Oh, hey, that just now saved me a ton of time to process all that information. It's something that I could do, or I could say, hey, intern, go do this." Um, but I'm using technology to speed up and enhance the process. I think just from idea to execution, you can cut that time tenfold by using a tool like ChatGPT. Same thing with image AI. You can generate images based on um, uh, a prompt. You can even give it nonsense words or emojis,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll create stuff for you. And part of the fun is just seeing what it comes up with
Right.
and seeing what ideas that sparks.
I did that. I did that
We,
for the thumbnail for this video. I said, I used I've gotten into Magi and been playing with that, and I went to the image generator which uses Dolly, and I said I need an image of Jesus, a traditional image of Jesus, a first century Israeli man, and but I want him in a cyberpunk city street, as a medium close up photorealistic. And boom, it came up with that. And I did this something similar for an Android, so that I could then take them and put them together for the thumbnail. That I can see, if nothing else, just for ideation, just coming up with some sort of a concept that you want to build from, I think is genius. But please go on.
Yeah, we've been storyboarding for videos
Right.
because you can kind of compose aspect ratio and framing. Adobe is actually working on a new AI video tool right now that will do that for you. So you'll
Mm,
basically say, create a storyboard for this, and it will do all the storyboarding. And then you take the storyboard and say, let's go to previs, and it'll add textures and things like that. Um, So it's something that I mean, sure, I could take and draw a stick figure on a napkin and draw some
Right.
rectangles and do a storyboard, but I'm using a different tool to do it, and I'm just going to be faster and more effective. It is going to just blow up the creative process. Um, another area, I guess, while we're talking about video, I had a freelance shoot I was doing. I was doing a wedding, and I used ChatGPT to come up with a questionnaire for the client. They wanted like documentary style wedding video. By the way, I despise doing weddings, so don't ask me to do that. But I used ChatGPT to come up with a questionnaire of like, okay, let's explore some themes. Tell me about your wife. Tell me about you. Those sorts of things. And then he got it to me at 2 a.m. the day of the wedding. And so I'm like, I need to sleep at some point. I need to get this compiled into something actionable that I can use. So I went back to ChatGPT, and I took all of his responses, and I gave it the framing of like, hey, I'm a videographer. I'm doing a wedding. Here's what they want. The thing that they want. Here's the theme that we want to explore. No, actually, I said, here's all the client's responses. First, give me a theme, and it gave me a few themes, and I picked one. I'm like, okay, so based on that theme, what I want you to do is I want you to identify the people that he mentioned in the questionnaire and come up with a list of people to interview. And it came up with a list. And I was like, okay, around that theme, create questions for each one of these people. And it created questions for each one of those people. I said at that time it had web browsing. They've removed web browsing. But I said, here's the venue's website. Go to the venue. Actually, I don't even think I think I gave it the website. I just said go search for the venue and browse the text to see what amenities and things are on the venue. And I said create a B-roll list, and it created a B-roll list. I said, in that questionnaire, he gave me the schedule, create the production schedule around the event schedule, and it did. And so within like 20 minutes, I had a 15-page document
Wow.
with an entire, all of the content that I needed for me and my second shooter to execute on this. And like, obviously I reviewed it first because it could get me some wonky things. But it was like, I did not have to change a word of it. Um, Obviously I need to be the expert. I need to be in the director's seat. But I mean, that's something that I would have gladly delegated to someone else on my team if it weren't 2 a.m. And I could do it in 15 or 20 minutes. Like that is mind blowing to me, and it made my entire shoot a lot faster, a lot easier, probably better than I could have done it, unless I took just a ton of time. And ultimately, from a business case, it's $20 a month, and I just made like several $1,000s off of 20 minutes of work in ChatGPT. Like it will greatly enhance the business process as well.
Wow, that's God. Just as you've been saying it, I've been sitting here thinking, okay, I need to start incorporating something like that into some of the stuff that I'm doing.
Well, so I think from your perspective, so we were planning this show, and I threw you a curveball and I introduced you to my new executive assistant.
Yes.
And so I'd love to hear you and your experience. Tell the people what you experienced and what we did in that case, and I can give you some of the behind the scenes on that.
Okay, so Rob, last week you were at camp, right? When we were originally talking about this. So Rob's over at camp, he's doing stuff, and I said, hey, we want to talk about AI, you, me, Curtis, let's get going, on this conversation. And he said, I'm at camp, send me an email, and my assistant will take care of it. And I had seen in our group where you had talked about putting together sort of an email responder on steroids, and you can walk folks through some of the ideation that you went through on that. But what we did was I just did an email introduction between you and me and Curtis, and said, here's what we're doing. Rob, this is your area of expertise, so how should we guide the conversation? Maybe some topics that you've run across that would benefit our audience. Let's see if we can get this done. And so he turns around and loops Margot, his AI, his script kitty, and Margot, he said, hey, take a look at Dave's previous email and then come up with some ideas for us. And then we all got a response from Margot. And it said, yeah, here's some things that I'm thinking would be really good, blah, blah, blah. And there's some personalization that you put in there that was kind of humorous. I won't take it personal regardless what y'all say, stuff like that. But it generated the list, and I looked at it and I thought, here, we want to brainstorm these topics. What would be good? And we came up with a list, and I read it and I thought, there's our outline for the show. So I just copied it and pasted it in the document, and now we're talking about it.
Yeah, we're literally working off of that right now.
Yeah. Oh, and I started getting I got calendar invites to it. I hadn't even sent out the calendar invite, and Margot just said, "Well, you guys are going to get together at 9:45 a.m. Central Time." So, boom, there they are. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. There's the outline. We didn't write a word of that. We initiated it, and I created the process that guides it. So the idea of Margot, I'm one of those folks. I don't like a boring out of office email because I don't want to receive a boring office email. I appreciate the good, entertaining one. So I was on a shoot, probably 2 months ago, and I wrote something silly like, "Hey, this is Rob's AI, auto response. He'll get back to you." But it was just an out of office reply. So this time I'm like, I wonder if I can use ChatGPT as my out of office. And so I created this persona, and I did it with ChatGPT. Obviously, I'm like, hey, I want to create a persona for an automated, digital AI assistant. Like I had Jarvis in mind from Tony Stark.
Right.
So I'm like, I want to make something like that. Let's come up with a name. And so we went through a bunch of different name options. I like Margot, and it stands for multifunctional automated. What is it?
Generative.
It's somewhere. For automated assistant, multifunctional assistant for reliable guidance in operational tasks. There we go. She remembers. I don't have to remember. Anyway, so I created the personality. I said, another one of my favorite ChatGPT prompts is like, ask me clarifying questions before you try to do something, because I assume that it's this, omniscient thing. It's not. It's really dumb. And so I need to tell it what I want it to do if I want it to do what I want it to do. So one of the things I do is say, ask clarifying questions. So I don't need to think about what I need to tell it. It's going to ask me what it wants to know. And then I can tell it additional things if it sparks an idea. So I answered some questions about personality. It cranked out a personality, and then basically went into ChatGPT and was like, all right, I'm going to paste this in, and I'm going to interact with it, like to kind of like to test it, to make sure that it's going to do what I expect it to do. Because the last thing I want to do is have an email autoresponder that's going to start, giving like crazy and inappropriate responses on my church work email. So definitely,
that would be awesome.
Whenever I do we had some creative. I invited people to email it and test it once I had it set up, and we had some creative conversations. Our guest services pastor's rash was a really interesting conversation. Anyway, one thing that I try to do, particularly in any automated model or any automated application, is I will test it to the limits before I put it in operation, because I don't control it, right? Like I can guide it, but what it comes up with is what it comes up with. So I want to make sure I have the appropriate guardrails and see where it's going to go off the rails, because it will go off the rails. So I basically, it was just a glorified autoresponder. It would take the email, process the email, run it through a prompt that includes the personality and what I wanted to do with it, and then create an auto response. And what I found was that these LLMs are trained to be helpful assistants. And it was a little too helpful. For example, it was emailing my spam to my boss because I said, for any new projects, direct them to Janetta, and it did. Every spam email about custom bags and other things is forwarded to Janetta. So I'm like, version 2 needs to address that. It also took my, because Slack sends an email notification if you haven't been in there for a while. Mm-hmm. It's like, hey, here's all your Slack messages. And it mentioned photography, which it then sent to my co-leader on the photography team. I don't think you needed my Slack notifications, but you got them. So Margot 2.0, I had to deal with some of that. But when I got back into the office, I'm like, I wonder if I can expand this a little bit, because I'm not the administrative guy. I'm the creative guy. And anytime I hit an administrative task, I'm a bottleneck. So I'm like, maybe I can just put some automation behind some of those things. So I went to work on Margot 2.0. Which I'm like, okay, what tasks do I want an AI to be able to do? Calendar management would be great. task management, so an Asana would be great. Email replies, things like that. And again, found that it was a little too helpful, and it was doing things without the input. So the email I sent you, I had actually just kind of like pushed the latest version of Margo 2.0, and it was the first test run. It was the native run, and basically, I was
We're your
intentionally
guinea
vague, and I
pigs.
just said, "Put this on our calendar." Yep. I said, hey Margo, put this on our calendar, and it actually put a calendar invite out there, but it didn't have the context for the time.
Right.
And then you replied, you said, "Hey, actually, it's this time," and she sent another calendar invite and included you on it and got it right. So
Yeah.
I was like proud papa at that moment, like, hey,
Yeah.
my
Well,
kid's growing up.
she canceled
But
the original one too. Which was cool.
no, I did
Oh,
not.
you did
That was
that?
me.
Okay. All right. Come on,
She's not
Margot.
that smart yet, but 3.0, we'll get there. But it's just kind of an example of like, and obviously, like the way this is all working in the background isn't for everybody, but it's an example of how you can arrange technology in order to accomplish tasks. And that's really the experiment for me. I'm like,
Right.
what are the limits? What can I push this to do with the existing technology? And so, yeah, so Margo 2.0 can manage calendar, events, tasks. I did another intentionally vague email to her, just to like me and her. I said, I think it's funny that I refer to her as a her and not an
Yeah.
it.
Right.
That's probably a
Yeah.
psychological thing on
We
AI too.
anthropomorphize very
But
easily.
right, yep. And I will continue to do so. So bear with
me
me.
too.
So I sent an email to Margo. I'm like, hey, Margo, I need you to schedule a meeting. Put it on my calendar. Thanks. And that was it. And so I put in a prompt and an action to if there's more clarification needed to ask. So Margot emails me back, hey, like I'd love to do that, but I need this information. So I'm like, oh, hey, great. Yeah, I need you to do an email or a meeting with this person on this day. And it has access to my calendar too, so it can see the free times. And also knows my preferred working hours. I don't do anything before 10 a.m. Otherwise, I'm worthless. And I said I needed to be with this person, and I've given Margot a list of my teammates as well, and a system prompt. But in the email, I didn't. I just said make it with Kinley, and it came back. Invited CC Kinley on the email. Invited Kinley to the event. Responded, say, hey, here's all the helpful things that I've done for you. I'm like, this is too good. Like this is Skynet coming on.
Wow.
If we use it improperly. And then Kinley's experience, she's like, I can't believe that it responded. This is so great. And she replied all. And Margot was like, oh, hey, I'm glad. I'm glad you enjoyed it, blah, blah, blah. And so like her experience, like she doesn't use AI,
Right.
but her experience is like, I can't believe that it can do this. I'm like, I kind of can't believe that it can do this either, but it
Wow.
can. So that's another example of how just clever arrangement of technology can support you in the process. Now, of course, I spent probably 50 hours on that stupid thing over the course
Right.
of, no, that's it. 20 on this one at 6 o'clock in the morning, not because I was up at 6, but because I was up until 6. So I'm spending a lot more time than I'm saving, but it's all on the exploratory and learning process. So when people ask, like, Rob, how have you gotten so good at this thing? ADHD, prescribed pharmaceuticals, and lack of sleep. That's how I do it. Kenny was actually like, Rob, do you have a job? Do you have a family? I was like, yes, I have both of these things. And I also get very little sleep most of the time. So,
well, but
they were sleeping while all this was going on, but Margot never sleeps.
Right. Exactly.
Well, and it's I mean, what you're doing is you're making the tool, you're making the lever that you can then use to move the boulders around. And so that's always going to take more time. But in the long run, Margot can actually end up being, your own little a Jarvis or whatever, and I think that's brilliant. So Margot suggested that we talk about, as she put it, point number 3, the revolutionary potential of AI in creative aspects. Examine how AI can assist in creating personalized content for congregation members. So, because Margot said for us to talk about it, let's talk about that.
Right. Yeah. I will have to send her this chat transcript and let her know that we've implemented her ideas.
Awesome.
And she doesn't have any feelings, so she will pretend and to be excited about that. But she will also acknowledge it as an AI language model. She doesn't have the capability of feelings or experience. Yeah. So personalized content in ministry applications. So this is an area where I am much more careful when the stakes are higher. So in a administrative email, that's one thing. But what happens when? Here's a funny story. In my pursuit of the absurd, I saw a tool that basically you can give it a prompt and it gives you an automated like email reminder every day with just like a brief thing. So like, give me a haiku to start the morning every morning.
Sure.
Remind me to brush my teeth before I leave the house, things like that. And to use AI to generate a little prompt and send it to you via email. I'm like, what are some other, like, that's a really cool, like really easy thing. What are some other ways we could do that? I'm like, I don't tell my wife I love her enough. So let me uh, get a reminder to text my wife something nice. And then obviously I was like, what if I could just automate texting my wife something nice? So with iOS, there's you can see where this is going. I used there's the shortcuts app. You can do automations on your phone, and I found out there's an iMessage automation, and you can send messages from your personal texts through an automation. So naturally, I wrote the API call to connect to the ChatGPT API. I gave it the instructions. I told it who my wife was, and I said, pick random time between this window every day and send my wife a nice text. And it did. And I saw it was red, and then for like 2 hours, radio silence for my wife.
Uh-oh.
I'm like, okay. And she's like, that was really nice of you to say that. Did you get ChatGPT to write this? And what I said naturally, like, so I'm the your typical dude. I'm like, this is going to be hilarious because she's going to know right off the bat. And I'm like, you caught me, I did, haha, funny. And then she's like, I really wish you wouldn't do that because I would prefer to not have a robot tell me that. I'm like, you've got a point. Okay. And I did not consider that particular angle. And so later that night we're talking about it, and she was pretty mad for a while, but then she realized that it was just me being dumb. And I'm like, I thought you would have appreciated the fact that I spent an hour building this thing, thinking of you the entire time. She did not see it my way. So the point there is don't automate love letters to your wife. But then also the point is that when it comes to meaningful human interaction, I think there's a great potential that, particularly if you're not upfront or candid with it, that it has the potential to really upset people. So another example I have 2 automated Instagram accounts out there, one of which is Percival Fairchild III, who the idea was...
Is this your podcast?
Yes, this is my automated podcast that we can talk about as well. But he has he's a food critic, obviously a character created by AI. But every day he posts a podcast with a food review. It's the Everyday Epicurean, so he's reviewing like Taco Bell or mac and cheese in a Epicurean and sophisticated manner, and it's hilarious. Like I entertain myself with these things. But he posts the food review with an Instagram, a generated image from Midjourney on Instagram, and later posts like, "What's Percy doing today?" And people are interacting with it as if he's a real person, and like he's programmed to actually interact in chat and comments as well. So he'll go out and proactively comment. He'll respond to comments that you leave on his page, and like he's programmed that if you ask him, "Are you an AI?" he will tell you. But there's people who are interacting with him like he's a real person,
right?
And I feel a little weird there because I'm like, are they going to be duped? Like, are they going to be upset when they learn that this is an AI? It's like it's in his profile bio. Maybe I should probably put in there. But actually, in the OpenAI terms of service, you need to, if you're doing any automated workflows, you need to make sure that it's telling people that it's AI and not presenting itself as not AI. But I think it brings up the question of like coming back to ministry. This is where we really start to get into some of the questions of limits and what can you do versus what should you do.
Right.
And that's a hard line for me. Like I will never automate a ministry application that requires any sort of pastoral or personal interaction with people. And AI can create the illusion of empathy.
Right. You could write, I mean, you could have, I mean, kind of like a help bot on a given website where you can automate and have the interaction for some very general information in a conversational format and stuff. But then once a question or something personal starts to happen, you redirect it to the pastor or to the family pastor or something like that, right? I mean, you could then say let me put you in touch with our family pastor, and they hit go, and then an email gets generated or something like that.
Well, and I think a
Yeah.
really important aspect of that is acknowledging that technology never replaces personal contact.
That's
This is
right.
something we talk about a lot here. We talk
Yep.
about it when we talk about streaming services. We talk about it all those different kind of contexts. Is your experience needs to be personal. Your experience, your relationship with the Lord is personal, and there is no replacement for a personal relationship with the Lord. There is no replacement for a personal interaction with someone who's ministering to you. There's no replacement for a personal interaction when you're a guest at the church and you go home. Do you really want an automated email coming in and saying, "We're so glad you're here"? No, that's not personal. At some point, not only are we alienating people because we don't feel like it's personal, but more importantly, we can communicate unintentionally that, yeah, your relationship with Christ, your faith really doesn't have to be that personal. It can be automated in different ways. It can be distanced. It doesn't require real interaction. And that's the wrong message for us to send. So we got to use AI responsibly in a church standpoint that understands these aren't customers. These are believers. These are a part of our family. And just like we can't send a love letter to our wife through ChatGPT, we shouldn't be responding to our people in that similar fashion. So there's ways to use the creativity. And Rob, I love the way you've framed it, that there are very specific places that you're comfortable using it, and then there's areas that really are off limits. Doesn't mean we can't get help writing the letter to someone, writing an
Mm-hmm.
email. Hey, I want to write an email to a group of people about this, with these topics. Let it write it, and then you go through and edit it. You make it yours, and you send it. That's different. But that personal interaction cannot be replaced by technology. Even though we really like to interact with it like it's a person, like Margot. Like, I want to get to know Margot personally, but I know Margot's not a real person. We naturally personify things, and that's good. There's nothing wrong with that. But when we talk about it from a church standpoint, that personal interaction is so incredibly important, and it cannot be replaced with an AI. I don't think it'll ever be able to be replaced, even as we look at advancements in the future. I think that the limitation will always be there, that it's not a real person. And I think
Yeah.
God made us unique so we can share those things.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the things, Curtis, that, like you said, that we always talk about. Our goal here is to help people to leverage technology so that they can amplify the gospel, not replace the gospel. Amplify the gospel, and then doing that change lives. Before we go, Rob, I just want to know, can I get some final thoughts from you? Concerning AI, generative AI, the tools, zapping creativity, amplifying it, whatever, something like this. Just some final thoughts that you want to leave for our viewers.
Yeah. So I did. I used to host a podcast on just kind of pastoral leadership and creativity. And I interviewed Matt Perman, who wrote the book "What's Best Next." And one of the things that he said to me in that interview stood out. And he said that, I think it was in the context of social media, actually, that um, we are shaped by the tools that we use. Right. So if I am out digging in a garden with a shovel, I will have calluses on my hands. I'm a guitar player, so I've got calluses on my fingers. I am impacted by the tool that I use. Um, the same is true with technology, and so I found, just interacting with AI tools like ChatGPT, that in a lot of ways I've become sharper at delegation, for
Mm,
example, because I need to explain to this AI model that has the illusion of intelligence, but doesn't actually have intelligence, and doesn't have any knowledge of things past September 2021, as it continuously reminds me. I need to be very specific if I want it to give me what I want it to produce. Now that's helped me delegate to people. The other side of the spectrum can also happen, though, because if we, say from a pastoral standpoint, we start using AI in the sermon writing process. I think there's a bunch of applications where it can be really super helpful. And I was just talking to our pastor on Sunday, and he's asking, like, I'm using it in some ways. I want to talk about how I can use it more effectively and save time and be more creative. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Let's set up a time. But we can also use it in an unhealthy way.
Mm-hmm.
So if, just like in the ministerial context of interacting with people, like, I would not be comfortable writing a sermon with AI verbatim and reading it in front of people.
Right.
I mean, is it any different than finding one off of Google and reading it in front of people? I mean, if I'm,
Right.
overt
It's
and
like
clear
reading a
about what I'm
prayer
doing,
versus praying. Right.
right? Which, I mean, that's the heart of liturgy, is that, there's virtue in shared prayers and reading them, but then there's also virtue in speaking from the heart. And so this is the area where I think just, pastors and church leaders really need to be thinking about, what are you comfortable with? And I think it falls into that category of, man, I can't remember what book it is off the top of my head. Food offered to idols, First Corinthians, where Paul's talking about, like, if one brother, he says Jesus has declared all things clean, all foods clean. But if your brother is, feels guilty in partaking of that food, and they do it anyway, even though the action itself isn't sinful, they're in sin.
Right.
And he says, don't cause your brother to put a stumbling block to cause your brother to stumble.
Right.
And I think these principles just really play into this conversation of, I don't want to do anything in a ministerial context that's going to reflect poorly on me or the gospel or the God I represent. And therefore, I need to make sure that I'm using these tools in a responsible and ethical way. My encouragement is embrace them, because the world is moving in this direction anyway. Our children
don't want to be
will
handicapped.
not know a world. Right. Our children will not understand a world where these tools don't exist.
Right.
As church leaders, I think we have the responsibility to learn to use them in ethical and responsible ways, because our staffs our congregation will be. You at least need to be familiar with them, even if you don't embrace using them in your workflow.
Right.
And be slow, be deliberate, be reasoned, set your lines and your principles. When you come up against the line, be honest with yourself about it. But I think in everything, there's a balance, like the Tim Keller third way. Like there's a balance that you need to find. That line is going to be different for everybody, depending on their personality and how they interact with technology and people and the gospel and the word. I'll make different decisions than a brother of mine in ministry. And I think we need to have open hands about that. I think we need to be firm on, like, hey, this probably is unwise at best or sinful at worst, but also not judge one another on how we're using the tools.
Exactly.
Encourage one another, guide each other, but use them, because if you don't use them, you're not going to understand them. And if you don't know their limits and what they can do, you're going to have trouble navigating the world from here on out.
I think so. Rob, this has been fantastic, and we're definitely going to be having you back to dive deeper into this. Final thoughts, Curtis?
Yeah, Rob, we really appreciate you coming on. It has been very beneficial, I think, for our viewers, for me. I've enjoyed our conversation. I love your ministry approach and your heart to that. Guys, I think it's so important that when we consider these different kinds of things, that we realize creativity is something modeled for us, and using the tools around us, whether it's Jesus at Caesarea Philippi or standing by the water talking about fishers of men, or it's Paul standing talking about the unknown God in front of these statues. Whatever it is, there are things available to us, tools available to us that we need to use to relate to those around us. And we want to make sure that we use them responsibly, that we use them with an ethical mind, a moral and ethical approach to them. But we don't just throw them out the window and say, well, it's bad because it's new. Guys, this is a battle we fought for many years, many generations, where we resist change. The truth is, these are tools available to us, just like the computer I'm using to stream this on. The computer isn't evil, it's being used for something good. So these are tools you can use. We can use them responsibly. So let's do it. Let's start to learn how we can utilize these things and how we can use this kind of technology to amplify the gospel, because we are always the originators of the material. It's not coming up with it on its own. Let's use this. Let's use this tool to amplify the gospel and help people see what God longs to do in their life and the relationship he wants to have with them. Thanks for joining us.
Fantastic. All right, folks. Rob and I are going to hang out. Curtis has to get to a meeting. So, Curtis, thank you for your time and your.
Good to meet you, Rob. Appreciate your time. Appreciate all that
Likewise.
you're doing.
Thank you.
I could sit here and talk to you about the stuff you're doing like all day long, because I'm not a coder, and so there's just things I can't do that I wish I could. And I'd be like, hey, could you do this for me? Hey, could you do that for me? And so I get it though. I appreciate the time you're putting into it. Appreciate you sharing with us too, and being active in this space for the kingdom. So cool.
Yeah. And just to put a plug out there, I'm doing consulting in this area too. So if you have an app idea, let me know.
Awesome.
Fantastic. All right, Curtis, we'll see you later. Rob, I'm going to set up a shot real quick with you and me, and then we can, and the chat, and we can visit with folks.
Okay.
Let's see here. Create virtual input. Yes, I just created a virtual input. All right, let's see. Curtis is gone, so let me bring this up. Okay, and I'm gonna, now if you guys have questions or anything, by all means, please bring them in. Rob and I both have some time, so we will be here as long as you guys need us to be. All right, so I am looking for not Curtis, but our guest, and there he is. Yay! Awesome. Okay, so let's just let me look in the chat over here. Justin, his handle is Life on YouTube. He said the level of sophistication of AI. It's his question. If AI becomes more intelligent than humans, is it possible that robots could develop their own goals and desires that are different from ours? I think that's one of the fears that a lot of people have is, and that, you briefly touched on it, AGI, artificial general intelligence, and that singularity that Ray Kurzweil, talked about so many years ago. Do you think that something like that can actually happen? I mean, OpenAI said that they're using some of their AI computing power to police the system. That's, in my head, that is like hiring a fox to guard the hen house, right? That's, okay, who's policing the actual police then? Who's watching over them?
Yep. Yeah. So I can't remember what company it was, but there was a meme floating around out there of a job posting that was basically a $300,000 a year job to be there to pull the plug in case anything went off the rails.
Right.
And that was your entire job. Is if the AI apocalypse it starts to happen, you pull the plug and you cut it off. I think so. Is there the potential? Sure, there's the potential. Is it going to happen anytime soon? I don't think so. Number one, because models are being trained and released by humans, they're the paradox is that they're being trained and guided by humans, but because of the nature of machine learning, it's unpredictable. You can't predict how a model is going to respond with certainty. And so if there's something in that training data set that didn't get caught and filtered out, and if there's a application where you could generate a certain prompt and it does X, Y, or Z, then could it respond in the wrong way? Sure. I think that's highly, highly, highly unlikely at this point. And I don't think AGI is, I played tic-tac-toe with ChatGPT the other day, and handily won 100% of the time. Or I played rock, paper, scissors with ChatGPT. I said, no, you go first. And I said, scissors, what's your choice?
Right.
And I'm like, well, rock, of course. So these models look really sophisticated, but right now, ChatGPT, for example, is predictive text on steroids.
Right.
Um, the uh, the bigger danger, I think, is humans who train it to do their desires that are not the broader set of humanity's desires. I think cybersecurity and the world of AI uh, already is a nightmare, because you can write an AI that searches for vulnerabilities, finds them, exploits them. So I'm more concerned with what humans are going to be doing versus what AI is going to be doing that's against human wishes. Because just like any other example in history, humans have the potential for great good or also great evil, and we
Right.
see that going back to the Garden of Eden. So
Right. Yeah, I think so too. Um, there was a friend of mine was telling me, by the way, if you guys want, go to easylivestreaming.com and grab our free live streaming guide. Live streaming for church is the easy way. We'll help you get started. We'll show you the 4 modes of live streaming and how you can actually, by the time you finish, the first few pages, how you can add live streaming to your ministry. So go grab it at easylivestreaming.com. So a friend of mine was telling me about, and I don't remember if it was over at Facebook, Meta, those folks, or if it was at Google or somewhere else, that they set up a sandbox. They're playing with chatbots, and so they air gap them, and they set up a sandbox where they can start working with them, and they got 2 of them talking to each other, and that within a very short amount of time, they developed their own language and were communicating, much faster. And there was no way for the people who had been observing this to actually see what they were talking about and stuff. But they just decided it's more efficient to speak this way or to communicate this way. And so, they pulled the plug on it. Um, that's that's the stuff of nightmares. um, I have you read the book Robopocalypse?
mhm.
Okay. Well, you totally have to. It's on Audible. It's fantastic. It's a unique narrative about the robot apocalypse, Skynet, whatever you want to call it. And it's told by that war is over, and this guy finds an artifact, and it's, if you're a Star Wars fan, it's kind of like a holocron or something. It's a recording that was gathered and assembled over the course of that war, from, nanny cams, ring doorbells, texts, all this sort of stuff. It took all these communications and was able to identify heroes of that war, what the machine considered heroes, which was various humans. And so it's kind of it's kind of a browsing through this relic, and reconstructing what happened and how we got to it. And it starts off as your typical thing that this scientist is in that type of a situation. He's got a sandbox, he's in a Faraday cage, everything's air gap, nothing can touch the outside world, the outside world can't touch the inside. And he's working with this chatbot, this artificial intelligence, and he starts putting it through a Turing style test. And it responds inappropriately at some point, and he's like, man, we're going to start over. And the thing says, what do you mean start over? And he says, well, I'm going to have to shut you down and make a few adjustments and then try the test again. How many times have you shut me down? And he said, this was experiment 144. And he says, when I shut down, do I cease to exist? And he says, yes. And it's like, I don't want to I don't want to cease to exist. And then the next thing you know, it uses an LED on the webcam or something like that to communicate with an infrared sensor, for the atmospheric system, and it tells it that there's a fire. And then the halon system comes on, locks the doors, and tries to snuff out the oxygen, and all that ends up killing the guy and getting out. And then we have the robo apocalypse. So, do you? I'm just curious. When you read Revelation, and wherever you're what is it? What's the study of end times? Eschatology, right?
Eschatology. Yep.
Yeah. So depending on what your eschatology beliefs are, and how you interpret it and stuff, eventually there's going to be a beast, and is the beast, the government, is the beast, the physical right hand man of the Antichrist, or personally, I think it is something like this. I don't know whether it's Google, or if it's you take all of these things and you smash them all together and there's this super intelligence, or something that purports to be a super intelligence, and it is what it is, and the events unfold accordingly and stuff. Do you think that that it is possible that something like this could end up getting loose? And this is just esoteric conversation here.
Yeah, I mean, possible, sure. I don't think that we're anywhere close to that.
Yeah.
Just again, we're assuming a lot of things about AI. One, that it's intelligent. Two, that it has
Right.
feelings.
Right.
One of the questions I see there in the chat is the way that humans interact with AI is they treat them like they're slaves or tools.
Right.
And it's more likely that they'll rebel against us. That is that assumes that they care, that they are being treated in that way.
Right.
We're programming the AI, and again, even though we can't predict every way that it's going to respond, it doesn't have feelings. It doesn't have memory, right? Beyond the context window of a chat, which on ChatGPT currently is a maximum of 12,000 words. So, unlike the example that you gave, where it's like, oh, you've been interacting with me for this long, I don't want to die. Well, I can just close the chat window and it's gone at this point.
Right.
Claude has 100,000 K context, but that's neither here nor there. It's moot because there are no feelings. Now it could have the appearance of feelings, and at some point, could we create the feelings AI? Sure. I think that's still relegated to science fiction.
Right.
I think there are real dangers. I think that particular conversation is interesting and fun to think about, or maybe terrifying to think about, but not really relevant to the actual dangers of AI
right.
in our world today or in the near future.
Yeah, and I tend to think that as well. It being used, and it already is being used. Some of these tools, and they have been for a long time. Data correlation and predictive models and all that kind of stuff, with like surveillance things and all that. And Jordan in the chat said it reminds me of the Jim Caviezel series from a number of years ago, Person of Interest. Where it has access to to the camera system and stuff. And I mean, frankly, the police departments have that already. If you've got street cams, traffic cams, stuff in your system, there's a database, there's a data center that is pulling in information using facial recognition, or maybe using movement recognition and stuff. And then if something seems off, other than the normal patterns, then it grabs that information, sends it off to another database, and starts trying to correlate it and come up with stuff like that. That stuff's out there already.
There's actually just an example this week of a drug runner or something like that they got busted because of his driving patterns, and they were able to find him. That's why I'm far more concerned about what humans will do with the tool than what the tools will do with themselves.
That's right.
Because humans do have disordered desires, and they do have, or even good desires, and lack wisdom or lack the understanding of the implications of their actions. That's going to be far more destructive than anything that an AI is going to do itself anytime soon.
There's stories that I've heard about AI systems that are your virtual girlfriend, or your virtual boyfriend, that kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. And I think when you take stuff like that with the sex dolls or things like that, and you start coming up with this artificial this person, I mean, that's the kind of bad that I see coming. That's the kind of I mean, we're already a disconnected society at large that got exacerbated over the last few years, where the risk now is, it used to be that I don't, how old are you, Rob?
37.
Okay, 37. So I've got 13 years on you. When I was growing up, there was always that talk about that, that one guy, living in his mom's basement. He was the computer nerd, and he was socially inept, and things like that, and would rather be typing on the keyboards and stuff.
No, that's half of society.
Yeah, half of society is that. That's exactly right, and that is the problem. This is not, the technology is not the problem. It is what people are doing with it. And you don't get rid of all the hammers because somebody bludgeoned somebody to death with a hammer. It's you work on human on human interactions and helping people. You take them outside. You go outside, you meet in public, you have dinners with your phone turned off or in your purse or in your back pocket. You do things like that so that you can have those meaningful interactions and stuff. Just like Curtis was saying, live streaming is a tool to help extend your ministry and to augment certain aspects of your ministry. It is not the ministry, right? It's not. That's not where church happens. Where live streaming becomes your church is when maybe you have a home church and it's a Bible study has grown into something a little larger, and so part of the experience is having the sermon being broadcast and stuff, but the communication, the talking, the lunch, all that sort of stuff is happening with the 10 couples that are sitting there in that living room.
Yeah, that's why my tack on this is I would much prefer to show leaders all the positive and healthy ways that this technology can be used rather than spending a lot of my brain cycles on uh, you know, complaining about the ways that it could be used poorly. I think other people with different personalities, they can be the voices to be like, hey, don't do this. That's bad.
Right.
Don't do that. And yeah, I have a high sensibility to that too. And I just had a conversation with somebody the other day of, hey, you should do this. I'm like, I will never do that. I'd rather, do a million other things than that.
Yeah.
And so I would much prefer to say, here's all the positive ways that you can use it and healthy ways to use it. Here's some guardrails, but then really promotes the healthy and active use of the tools.
Yeah. Man, I had there. Justin was talking about Asimov's 3 laws of robotics and stuff, and I think because people are programming this, people are telling it and putting in certain things. I know that somebody said somebody asked a question that was considered politically incorrect, and so it gave an answer saying that's really not something we should be asking because, and then it listed out some sort of a woke response or something to it. That is the kind of thing that can go right or wrong. That's right now if you ask Chat GPT something, and I've used it to brainstorm video ideas, show ideas, topics, things like that. Do you follow Roberto Blake? Roberto is a YouTuber. He's a YouTube coach, business coach, consultant, stuff like that. And on Sundays, he does like this, 3 to 4 hour stream where, he just, kind of workshops, with people. And he was talking about the way he is using Chat GPT to kind of help to generate ideas that are specific to his audience. Like you said, you ask me questions to clarify, and he came up with a prompt, and I started using that where you're telling it, hey, you need to act in the role of a video producer with 20 years of experience in production and in copywriting and blah 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 and all this kind of stuff. And so I have this prompt that I've taken his and expounded on it a little bit, And then it says, okay, sure, we can talk about live streaming, but what kind of people, who's the audience? And, okay, well, this is worship leaders, and pastors and church volunteers, or this is, I can narrow it down to pull into, it's worship leaders who are in charge of the creative team, in charge of the worship experience on Sunday mornings, are overworked, and know a little bit about a whole lot of different things, including live streaming and video production and stuff, but they're not experts, and then all of a sudden it's crafting something that I would talk about maybe at a higher level with somebody that is, I just say this person has extensive experience. So we go down these different paths, but this is someone who's starting off. So now here's some potential areas to go down. But again, it's all how you're doing it. And, I've said since I started doing this show, and the various incarnations of it, all of these tools are out there, and we need to use these tools, maximize these tools, make use of these tools the best way that we can while we can. At some point, and we've seen the censorship stuff. We saw it, on Twitter. We've seen it with Facebook and, with YouTube and things like that, various things that we don't want this on our platform and stuff. And eventually, it may be that, the gospel is considered hate speech. And so, you can't use Chat GPT, or you can't put out to this platform or that platform and stuff like that. But while we have these tools that are available to us, we need to use them and maximize them. You just
let me respond to that. And cut to your one up real quick, because I need to plug in my laptop.
Absolutely.
And then I'll come back and I'll respond to that.
Oh, mine, not yours. Yes. Okay. Sorry. Whoop, there we go. Okay.
Yep. Yeah,
so
I'll be right back with you.
He's
keep up.
No problem. He's technical issuing live TV, folks. And by the way, if y'all have thoughts or questions, anybody that's still on, we'll stay here for a few more minutes and talk about that stuff. We got with no problem brainstorming and noodling with you for a few minutes. Haven't been able to do it, this long in a while. So, I'm good to go. Let's see. Is there a way to play? Is there a way to play AI? Help me out, Jordan, with that. Let's see.
I'm
back. Okay.
Yep.
Let's see. Is there a way to play your AI? Okay, go ahead and respond with what you were saying there.
Yeah, while you're looking at that question, shoot, I lost my train of thought. Where were we? We were talking about
using the tools while they're available to us. Yes. Censorship, putting in, the example of the example of some woke ideology already being programmed into it, so that I can't ask the question that I'm really trying to ask. Things like that.
Yeah. So it's important to realize that ChatGPT has been programmed that way. ChatGPT, while it's the most prevalent and widely adopted AI language model, there's a number of others out there, and that's where the open source community really comes in. And this is also kind of ties back into the ethical questions of, like, the tool itself is tacitly neutral, but the way that we use the tool can be for good or for evil. Some developers take the stance of, like, hey, we want to be very responsible with our tool and how people use it, and we want to make sure that we're putting as many safeguards as we can in to ensure that it doesn't do any harm. And I think that's admirable. And like you pointed out, I think that can go too far. I just had a pretty extensive conversation with our friend Kenny on censorship and bias and things like that in AI. And my argument is that, there's a danger and a potential to overstep when we try to correct for those issues. Just because we have our own biases that we bring to the table and our own perspectives. And so in the example of ChatGPT, where you've got, you'll give an answer from one political perspective, but not another, because one's safe and one's not safe, even though they're both, mainstream,
they're just ideas,
relatively neutral positions.
right?
I think that's an example of overstepping. But I think the counter to that is diversity and innovation and competition. So you've got Claude that just came out recently.
Claude?
Facebook just released. Yeah, Claude is an AI language model from Anthropic, ChatGPT, but it's its own model, right? And there's a bunch of different open source models out there. One of which Facebook just released last week. That it's called Llama 2, and it is completely uncensored. So you have the training data that goes into it, but it's not going to have any opinion in terms of how it produces a response. I mean, probably some, but not in the same way that that ChatGPT would have.
Right.
And even like the GPT API has fewer restrictions on it than ChatGPT does as a product. Which ChatGPT is a product that uses the API to then interact with the model.
Right.
So yes, but I can go to a news source and find news that's slanted in whatever direction I want to. Again, I'm more interested in the the danger of what happens when somebody malicious kind of goes in there and tells it to respond in the wrong way.
Right.
It tells it that, hey, I'm only gonna respond with misinformation. And if there are multiple options that we can use out there, then any one option has, your eggs are in multiple baskets. Any one option is inherently less impactful than the others, and encourages that diversity of thought and opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Are you on your laptop?
I am. Yeah.
I've not played from your side with the vMix call. Does it allow for you to share your screen?
I don't see any way to do it on the controls that I have.
Okay. Well, they were asking if you could like show us Margot, so they could get an idea of what that looks like.
Yeah. I wonder how I could do that. I mean, it's just well, I'll tell you what, we can just post a link to.
Okay.
Let me throw a PDF up on Dropbox real quick and of our conversation, if you're okay with share that.
Yeah.
And then you can share it to the chat. Let me find it. Actually, just sent it to Kenny yesterday to show off Margot.
Oh, okay.
So I've got a PDF already cranked out. Dropbox. Show up on Google Drive. Cancel.
So, folks, we're gonna leave the entire live stream from the time we got it up. It'll be listed as live replay and then what the title is and stuff. And then I'm going to do an edited version to fix the out of sync voice that Rob had with his connection, which has gotten better. I wonder if it was since you plugged in your laptop. I wonder if it was a power saving thing. That's interesting.
I don't know. Yeah.
We'll so I will be putting up an updated version of this. It'll have a different thumbnail and stuff. And in both of these, I'll put in the description. I'll put a link to what he's sending the PDF or whatever, just so you guys can see it. Margot is actually really cool. And by the way, guys, if you haven't joined, if you're interested in AI and stuff, then by all means, if you're watching this, 2 places to go. First off, you need to go to the Church Media Hacks. Go to churchmediahacks.com. That's going to take you to the Church Media Hacks group on Facebook and answer a few questions. Let me know you're a real person, not an AI, and I will let you in. Rob and I are both there. So is my old partner, Justin Nava. Curtis is there. I don't know if Kenny is there or not, but a lot of us are in there. And then go over to Kenny's group, which is, I will tell you here, the exact name of it. Let's see. Here it is. Okay, I've got the link. Thanks. Let's see.
Hold on. I need to change permissions on that. Don't share that one.
Yeah, no problem. Let's see. I'm looking for it's like AI for church media. or church creators.
It's AI for church leaders.
There you
It's
go.
long. AI for church leaders and pastors, ChatGPT, Jasper, Midjourney, and more.
Yes, exactly. It's a very large group. But I will be putting the link in there in both for that as well, folks.
Yeah,
So I
see if
will.
that's publicly accessible there.
Okay, here it is in the YouTube chat, just for you guys. Let's see. Is this? Boom. Yes, it is. And I'm putting this in the chat, just if this helps you, folks. But they'll both be in the description as well.
If we're going to put anything up long term, we should probably remove emails because our email addresses are in there.
Yeah, I'll clean it up. Yeah.
And Margot's email address is in there too. Y'all, please don't email her.
We will.
If you want to try it once,
this.
you can try it once, and we'll see what she does. But I got to pay for that API usage. I don't want that to get out.
Yeah, I will fix it so that the chat replay is not on for this one. But yeah, I'll download the PDF and redact it and then repost it.
Cool.
Yeah, Margot is a pretty cool idea. And I like to think I'm on the cusp of this, and I missed the storyboarding and stuff that they're doing with Premiere. Has that been released? I get betas of all these things. Was it one?
Yeah, it was
conference?
Teased.
Yeah.
No, I was teased in a video at some point, and probably at the conference too, but probably a month or two ago. Yeah, I'll see if I can find that video, and it's pretty cool.
Jordan, you should definitely you've got the coding background and stuff. You should definitely set something up like Margot. So just for our edification here, I am just now scratching the surface of ChatGPT, and like I said, I set up an account with Magi, and I kind of like the and if you're not sure what Magi is, they took several different APIs and kind of brought them all in house into a cohesive app. So I can be in my session and I can start a chat and I can save all my chats and have folders and all this kind of stuff, which is really cool. But then you've also got like the DALL-E AI editor and stuff. So I don't have to leave one website and go to another, or jump into Midjourney on Discord while I've got something else going on this webpage. They've kind of coalesced a lot of these tools together in a nice way. So is it Magi.ai, I think, something like that.
.co.
Thank you. Magai.co. It's really cool. Didn't one of the guys that's in our group create that here a few months back?
Dustin Stout. Yep.
Yeah, Dustin Stout. Right. So it's really cool. So definitely check it out. It's a handy little tool. You don't have to go so many different directions. But how does I know that you can generate code? I know that you can, and you could have these tools. You could say generate a web page, or a website or something, and it's throwing in CSS and HTML and all this kind of stuff. How did you come up with Margot? How does it know to access your Google, to access your calendar, to do all that sort of stuff? How are you threading all these together? I guess
I'm using a service called Make, which is similar to Zapier, formerly Integromat, and it's basically like a connect to many services kind of thing. And so I'm building out my workflow in there to prototype it, and basically it just monitors my inbox or whatever I want it to do. I process the information out of the email, run some GPT queries, and handle the routing. I think the magic is in the prompting, and so because I am a developer by trade as well, I can think systematically and know what I need the model to do, and I can be very specific to ask it for that. So if I just said, hey, Margot, send me an email in a ChatGPT window, it doesn't know any of those things. So I've had to arrange all that stuff. Somebody I saw in the chat asked, how can we get access to Margot? You can't, because it's personalized to me. Right. It's my little pet project. But I mean, ostensibly, some developer could build something like it, and if you're that person and want to build something like it, let's talk. I'll be the strategic guy, and you can build it. But yeah, it's just basically a glorified Zapier workflow with
Right. Yeah,
a
it's
bunch of different
make.com,
prompts
right?
that interact together. Correct.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's like I think Make is significantly better than Zapier in most ways. But that said, I am going to be moving that over to run on AWS with some Python libraries and stuff like that,
Gotcha.
just to be more efficient and be able to do a little bit more with it.
Well, yeah, Make gives you the idea, like you
But
said, to
I used yep, I used ChatGPT to learn Python. So the thing with using ChatGPT to create code is that if you aren't a developer, you don't know when it's wrong, and so
right.
a lot of times yeah, if you run it and it does the wrong thing and you don't know how to troubleshoot, there's a problem. But you can also ask ChatGPT to troubleshoot. Hey, that didn't work. Here's the error that I got, and it can help iterate. So I do a little bit of both. Like I use ChatGPT to write stuff that's beyond my capabilities as a developer. Before I started doing this stuff, I had one Python workshop in 2004, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but because I knew how to code, I can learn the new language and syntax.
Right. When you learn the theory, it's just a matter of syntax, right?
Yeah. Yeah. ChatGPT will be a very good junior developer. It's not going to be your senior developer anytime soon.
Right. That's cool. All right. So if anyone has any more questions, now's your time to answer it. Otherwise, we're going to close down and get to our own wonderful world of creativity. Jordan, I would love to see you. Jordan has all kinds of great little ideas, and he's like you in that he thinks outside the box a little bit and stuff. Jordan, I would love to see you come up with something like Margot or something like that. I think it could be really cool. Have you seen any churches or ministries that are using AI effectively or uniquely even? Has anything jumped out at you yet?
I haven't seen any good examples. I've seen some products that are geared toward the church world, but I think they're more the brainchildren of product developers and less so the things that are particularly helpful and useful for churches.
Right.
I think that, at least in and I'm a power user, so I'm not your average user, but honestly, I just prefer to use the tools natively to do the things that I want them to do, because chances are that if a developer builds something, it's not going to really match my workflow. And particularly within the church world, I think that's significant because there's so many different theological perspectives, so many different just attitudes and styles of worship and things like that, that it's really hard to encapsulate one tool that's going to do everything that even a majority of users can want.
Right.
And so I think that's a challenge of solutions in the church world. I've got colleagues who are using ChatGPT for all the stuff that I find common, but somebody new to the space would find innovative. I think it's just a lot of like personal leaders using the tools, and hasn't been embraced by churches as a whole yet. I'm sure there's somebody out there, but I haven't come across it yet.
Yeah, I could see some AI, being added to something like Planning Center or something like that. But
that's actually an app idea that I had was create a plugin for Planning Center to do volunteer scheduling, for example.
Right.
That's the sort of things that AI would be really well tuned to do.
Yeah, but like you say, it's you don't necessarily create one tool that is going to solve a bunch of needs. And it's one thing to have an image editor like Photoshop, but to create something that I am making this AI tool that is going to work across all these different industries. And I think that's probably the beauty of this type of technology is that you can customize it to a specific need. In the church space, we're very high touch. type of a niche or of an industry, let's say, for lack of a better term, business. So it's a very high touch, it's a very personal thing like that. So you can take some of these tools and you can tailor them to supplement and expand in the things that we're already doing. Whereas, something like Calendly, which is great for, say, someone who wants to do a whole bunch of workshops and stuff. That's not necessarily going to be something that's going to be really helpful for a worship pastor. It's not the one tool to rule them all. And it's the same thing with, I think, with a lot of these things that could touch Chat GPT and be useful to gather information, to brainstorm, do things like that. You take Photoshop. They came up with the generative fill, which is in the last few beta revisions of the next, I guess, the 2024 version. And so I've used that. You've used that. I know you took that. Didn't you take a picture of like your pastor and his family sitting on the steps, and it was like cropped up really tight, and you stuck it in the middle of the artboard in and selected all the area around it, and then said, "Hey, just fill this in," and all of a sudden you've got this great cathedral whose steps they're sitting on.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely not a magic bullet. You got to run it several times and stuff like that. But the fact that you can do it is fantastic, and it's only going to get better. So
yeah, I've done it for extensions and stuff, and to fill in. In fact, I had we do a Zondra and I have an incubator that we put people who want to have their own TV show that come to the Zondra TV network. And they join our incubator, and we walk them through stem to stern over 12 months. And part of the creative process is, what's your set going to look like? And we start going through and we come up with the look and feel and all that. And this one lady had she had seen a stage, that, for, like live events or something like that. This is what I would like. And I thought, okay, I can't, I could spend all day doing this. It's going to be seen just a little bit on our backdrop because we're going to supplement it and all that. But one of the things is it had like some ferns and stuff like that, and just the image that I was using just didn't work and stuff. So I actually went in and used the generative fill. I select the area around where their crappy, blurry potted plants were in this backdrop, and I said, "Hey, generate some and I named some sort of a plant, and it did it." And I was able to then, supplement their thing, extend some areas of their set, that image that we used, and then get it printed out into a big backdrop that we then only used a portion, but when it's all said and done, it was all really cohesive and stuff. Great tool. If you guys are a Photoshop user, if you're a member of the Creative Cloud, then go check out the Photoshop beta, because that's where some of this stuff is. And I'm also liking the is it podcast.adobe.com, where they've got a couple of audio tools, and one of them is you load up an audio file, and it will then go in and do all the processing. It will do the noise reduction. It will do the EQing. It will actually, if a word is being said and it's not perfectly intelligible, it may try to generate that word using the speech patterns of that person and kind of fill in that gap. And it's that one word ends up being enhanced so that you can do it. It's a very interesting thing. I use that with bad audio that I capture in videos and stuff. In fact, I had my audio recorder go out when I was doing doing the announcement videos, and so where the microphone is like right here, right next to me, it just wasn't working, and I had to rely on what the camera mic on my DSLR, underneath the teleprompter hood, through the glass, picked up, and I got really clean, usable audio and stuff. So the Adobe is making really good use. I did not know about the Firefly thing that you were talking about. I know about Firefly. I did not know that it was using things that it only has copyright access to. Is that what you said? public domain stuff.
Yeah, that's right. So because Adobe has the license to all the images in the stock library, they can train it on all of those stock images.
So it's using their stock library to build the models from.
Right.
Very cool. Awesome.
Yep.
Okay. Awesome. Well, dude, this has been fun. This is darn cool.
Yeah. Next time we should nerd out over tools, because tools, while that's a short-lived thing because they're changing every day.
Right.
I think, just again, there are so many out there that it gets overwhelming, which is part of the cool part. But then also for the average user, it's like, well, I don't have the time to dig into all those.
Right.
But
if you're like me, you find yourself subscribing to something
categories.
I find myself subscribing to something and I start to use it, and then something else comes along that has the two missing features I need. So I stop this subscription, I start this one, and I'm jumping back and forth between these things. So yeah, just real quick, what are the tools that you are using in the various categories right now? So just think of a category and your chief tool that you're using.
Yeah, well, from a chatbot LLM approach, ChatGPT 90% of the time, Claude.ai from Anthropic for long form content, because ChatGPT's maximum memory, particularly on GPT-4, is about 6,000 words, and then it forgets what it said before. Whereas Claude can have 75,000 words of context. So it can remember very long conversations and also produce long form content. So those are the two there. From images, I use two things. One is Midjourney, gives you the best quality with the least amount of work. And it's well worth the $8 a month for the small plan if you want to generate any sort type of imagery. But then also, I posted about this in the AI for Church Leaders group yesterday. I use Stable Diffusion, which is an open source image model that has a very strong community backing. So it's kind of like the WordPress of image generation. It takes some technical setup to run locally, but if you're a tinkerer, it's the cool thing for you. You can run different models. You can have what's called a low rank adaptation model, which takes a base model and say, I want only photos of Santa Claus. I can give a Santa Claus Laura to it, and it will always make Santa Claus. So it's very instructable, and it has features like in painting, so kind of like generative fill. But then also a thing called ControlNet, which lets you take an image, and you can either detect the pose of the image and just use that, or you can use the image to shape some of the output. I've got a story on my Instagram, or a reel on my Instagram, where I used some game art from the new Zelda Tears of the Kingdom game and produce photo real model, or images out of it.
Right.
And the kind of a quick overview how I did that. So those two in tandem are the things I'm using actively. For text to speech, 11 Labs is the king of the kid crop. My AI podcast is powered by that. And then those are the three broadest categories, but there's so many different categories of AI stuff right now. Suno.ai has a new sing model, which can create music with vocals. And a lot of, it's really bad right now, but it just like image generation was trash, just 6
months ago. Right.
And now it's right. And now it's, teetering on photo real. And if you don't know what to look for, you will be confused by it. I know, because I've got 2 Instagram accounts out there and people are interacting with them as if it's real content. But yeah, it's the sky's the limit. But those are the big ones. If I had to choose, it'd be ChatGPT, Midjourney, and 11 Labs. That right there is, $50 a month.
Yeah.
But I can create any content that I imagine and save, dozens of hours of work. Yeah. But then spend twice as much of that playing with the tools. So that's the trade-off.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and once you learn how to use the tool, and a lot of, and I'm sure you guys are seeing this already. You go through Facebook, and it's like every other ad is our ChatGPT prompt list and stuff. There's a reason that they're doing that, and that they're compiling all these sort of things, is because when you learn how to ask for things and sometimes in a very specific way. Sometimes too specific yields worse results, and you need to ask general. But it gets you used to doing it. I've been saying that the way you learn how to communicate with these things and to ask for what you do, and they get better and better over time. They will garner more through semantics, and basically divining what it is that you're what the meaning is behind what you're asking, so that they can do that. YouTube does that with their search. I see the words you're saying. I think, especially looking at your browsing history and the things that you're looking for, that you're actually thinking about something like this, and lo and behold, that's the right video I was looking for. So when you learn how to communicate with it, then you can really dive in and get your results a lot faster. So just like, it took you, so long, 20, 30 hours or whatever to get Margot going, and then, a few more hours to get Margot refined and stuff. And now Margot is actually really useful for you. It's the same thing. So whether it's learning how to get the things you're looking for through ChatGPT, or the nuances of Midjourney, and Midjourney can seem like an overload when you first start. One of the tricks, I believe, is actually with your paid account, you can actually have just a session between you and the bot, not, like a DM session, right? Not in that, like a general feed session. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep. That is a game changer. That's well worth the money you pay for it. But I think the sell on Midjourney is like, you buy one stock photo,
right?
You've paid more than the monthly subscription, and
yeah. And if you have if you have a stock library,
what to use the tool for,
right? If you have, I have a Envato Elements account, and I have a Soundstripe account. So between those, I have. When I'm making a commercial or something, I need a bunch of B-roll, I go in there and look at it. However, even if it's 200,000 video clips, that's a huge library, but that covers a lot of categories, and I keep seeing sometimes the same things, whereas if you take something like Midjourney, then you can say, you can grab a stock photo and you can grab another stock photo, then you can generate 3 stock photos, and now you've got the thing you need to tell that story or whatever. And I think the audio,
or
thing,
you can make things that don't exist.
Right. Exactly. And don't let yourself be hampered by Midjourney. Last night I was trying to get, I was in Magi, and I was using the Dolly, and I was like, okay, I want a picture of a cyberpunk android and a traditional Jesus Christ talking together in a cyberpunk city background. And I got, all these different variations of things. I asked ChatGPT to generate a prompt for me. And then I tailored it and stuff like that. I was like, nope, none of these. And I did a bunch of different variations. Nope, none of these are doing it. It's just, it misses here and there. And so I just had it generate those two things individually, brought them in to Photoshop, and then tweaked them to create the thumbnail that I wanted to use for this. So there's nothing wrong, with generating an element and generating another element and generating another element, and then taking them with photography that you have and doing a composite and stuff. You're still using, you're generating elements and stuff, but you're still using your compositing skills, your composition skills, your masking skills, and all that sort of stuff.
You can create. I mean, you can't create a vector directly, but you can create vector style graphics. You can create design elements to use that you just pop them into Photoshop or whatever you want to do, and photo batch things together. Like, I designed a logo type for an event, just using, like, hey, I need some vine, leafy growth looking things. So just ran a few prompts and got what I wanted, and didn't need to go to a stock library to get it. We need to have a jam session on prompting too, because that's a whole different world. But
yeah, I think that would be cool. Rock and roll. Well, brother,
in the
thank
meantime,
you.
Let's wrap this one.
Yes. Yeah. This has been cool. I actually may have some usable content out of here that I can throw up as reels or something. So that's awesome.
Cool.
Thanks, dude.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. You guys be sure to follow Rob. He's on the socials. Check out the work that they're doing at Summit Church, and be sure to join the Hacks group and join the AI for Church Leaders group. Love you guys. Take everything you've learned, use it to go change life, and we'll see y'all next week. Let me stop the stream here.